Please.
Okay, so welcome to this second session of FIRE. So this session is about the role of FIRE for business-driven development activities. And this, I will say again, focused on the SMEs issues. So the kind of question that we had in mind when organizing the session was how FIRE can help SMEs, what type of SMEs, high-tech or commercial ones, what is the distinction between PPP and FIRE. So I didn't realize it for the first session, but it's a little bit finally a continuation of the discussion that we started in the first session. Also, what kind of service should we add to better serve SMEs, but this was already tackled also by the presentation partners. So we will have three presentations. One is a presentation for Fusion, which is a support action, which goal is, of course, to support SMEs to introduction to FIRE. So we'll have a gap analysis, which is presented by Donald. Then we'll have Wing ICT, which will present the experience on crew. So really is a point of view for the SME. And at the end, we have a presentation from Ayman, speaker Daniel, about the open call for SME, from Fed for FIRE. And maybe there we can look at how this has been changed and how this is better fitting to SMEs. So without waiting, because time is running and we don't want to finish today. I will give the word to Donald for his presentation of Fusion.
Thanks, Jean-Charles. My name is Donald Morris. I'm with Red Zinc and part of the Fusion project. Our company is an SME. We're based in Dublin and in Portugal. We've been involved in the FIRE projects as an SME using them. And we've been involved in the Fusion project really to help SMEs get better connected to FIRE. And so what I'm going to tell you about is the process we've gone through engagement with SMEs. We've done a gap analysis. We've asked a lot of SMEs what are the requirements, what do they really need, and at the same time we've been promoting the FIRE projects to the SMEs. So we did a gap analysis of the requirements that we saw, picked the major gaps, and I'd like to present those to you. And we have some suggestions around the gaps. And then we've just we're starting to work on what could be a model template for engagement from SMEs, and really just trying to take the SMEs hat and see what they really would like. Mm-hmm. So I guess Fusion is it's kind of it's a brokering approach. Connecting clusters, connecting FIRE facilities, and really having a dialogue between FIRE facilities and SME clusters and SMEs, mainly through web conferences and through telephone calls. And we have a portal, SME for FIRE, which really provides information, funding opportunities, what's happening, and we've had a lot of engagements over the last 14 months with lots of different SMEs. Some examples: SME in London, cloud area, cluster in Dublin, in France, company in Dublin in France, in the leisure sector, a semantic web company, and a company in the educational space. Cluster again. So we've had lots of different engagements, and I suppose we captured 37 different requirements at different levels, and I won't go through the detail of those. We're going to just focus on the main ones. I mean, some of them, one of them, let's say, example, came from the Idea Lab. So the Idea Lab is a incubator in London. And they just said, everything needs to happen really quickly. It needs to happen on a three-month time scale. Even 6 months is at the outer boundary. And they're actually looking at being involved in the Horizon 2020 proposal around this. We looked at Whole School of Dublin. They were interested in having scale test requirements, and we put them in touch with the Bonfire project. And they came last year to FIA and presented. We organised a conference called Bonfire for them. And then there was another one from Startup Bootcamp. They had they said test beds need real users, and they came along to the event in Dublin. That's just to give an example, and I suppose they were saying that that the Fire is offering to them X, it's offering to them oranges, and they're looking for apples. It's kind of a mismatch. That prompted us to do a gap analysis. So we just looked at the main requirements that were coming out and said, okay, what are the key gaps? So I suppose the first one is that is velocity, speed of response. Startups they're moving fast. SMEs are moving fast. They move faster than telecoms companies do. They move faster than research organizations do, and they just see that the Fire process is slow. They see now. I know this is changing, and I know that the new Fed for Fire SME call was different. But this is kind of the feedback. This is the kind of perception that's out there. There's an annual cycle, a long evaluation process, a long negotiation process, a long engagement process. Everything takes longer than 12 months. So there's kind of there's a gap there. I suppose they kind of said to us they're looking for validation. They've got products, and they're looking really to validate those products. They're not really looking for experimental facilities. One of the SMEs we talked to said, well, experimentation, it kind of sounds like we're back at school. What we really want is to validate our product. They're looking for assistance with that, I suppose. They're also saying, okay, Fire is offering massive infrastructure, which it is, but they said that they're also looking really for user experience testing. They'd like to see that in some way combined with Fire. How could people be plugged into all of this resource? And could the test beds come with real people? And the example they had in mind was a hospital. This was coming from a startup incubator that's connected to the health sector. They said, well, okay, Fire is funded by the government essentially, and hospitals are funded by the government. So why aren't the two plugged together? And why couldn't new products be tested out in a medical environment in some way? So they were kind of saying there's a gap there. They're looking for simplified engagement. They just see that there's lots of overhead with EU projects, and I know that's changing as well. But that's what the perception is out there. That they're looking for no fuss engagement. They looked at risk, so they're saying they're bringing new products to market, and it's there's a technical risk, and then there's an acceptance risk. So the technical risk is well addressed by Fire, but they're also saying acceptance risk. So acceptance risk is about, do users really want to use the solution, the service, the product in the way they anticipate it? And they're saying that in some way if Fire could go further and help with acceptance risk. The example, it came up twice. It came up from Startup Bootcamp in Dublin, and it came up in one of the conference calls. They said, what Google do is they release a beta, and it gets tested with people pretty quickly, and they're trying to see could that model be in some way adopted through Fire. Now, this is what the ask was coming from this discussion. So could Fire go towards addressing acceptance risk, not just technical risk? They're looking really for an out-of-the-box solution. They really need to be handhelds. I guess there's different categories of SMEs. There's kind of SMEs who are very much embedded in research, and they kind of know how to engage with the EU process and the projects process, and classify our company that area. There are SMEs that have a concept, and they're I'm really talking about startups, I suppose. They have a concept and they have an idea, but they don't really have a prototype yet. they were kind of out of the scope. But there was kind of a category of startups that probably have seed funding, maybe $1 million. They have a prototype, €1 million, that kind of Series A level funding, and they're looking to go to the next stage. But they're looking for, they see EU projects as a maze, as a complicated maze. Now, I know lots of things have been done to address this, but that's kind of the perception that's there. And then the seventh gap, they said, where's the, talking about R&D, where's the development side? They're kind of, if it's SMEs, they're really more interested in development than research. And anyway, that's the remark there. So some suggestions around the gaps. So in terms of the speed issue, I mean, our suggestion is that fire codes are available on a rolling code basis, maybe every 3 months. More flexibility. Now, I know these are very kind of tight timescales, but they were saying, we'd like to be engaged and have the solution tested, validated, whatever, in the 3-month window. 3 months, I think, is tight, but that's what they're saying. So to get to 3 months, you really need to have a rolling cycle. You need to have, a 2-week decision cycle, a 2-week negotiation cycle, and an 8-week results cycle. We're just looking for it to be simplified, and I guess that's one of the suggestions. I suppose repackage the offer to include service and product testing. So it's experimentation, but it's experimentation around a product and a solution. It's not really focused on the insides of the test bed. It's focused on what they have. And that really means becoming a service, becoming a kind of an offer. And I guess what Florian talked about earlier, Florian's gone now, but the model he's going down seems to be in that direction. Certainly what we saw in Untitled Chapter recently is going down that direction too. Real users and test beds, students, hospitals, manufacturing, residential, commercial. That's what they're saying, is that they like real users because you can test with simulated users, and we did that in the CityFlow project. We simulate users. You get certain mathematical models for what user behavior is going to do. But if they're looking for user experience testing, then you really need to have users plugged in. So plug in hospitals, plug in residential communities. We had 2 SMEs we spoke to in London on the roadshow event we did, and both of them were in the retail sector. So that means shops and suppliers, manufacturing, I guess, in manufacturing to retail supply chain. They're simply looking for no fuss. So the Article 15 is giving simple rules, I guess, for Horizon 2020 that should really be adopted. And I think it's giving good power to new projects to make a no-fuss environment. It looks fantastic. To simplify the engagement. Bring in tools for acceptance risk. Suggest that fire test beds find ways to get tools together so that new services and products can be done. And I guess that's lined up with bringing in user communities. I guess it's the same message. On one hand, they're looking for user communities, and on the other hand, they want to do acceptance risk reduction. They want to do acceptance testing. And out of the box service support, so find a way to make the offer really user friendly, so you can just go and get it quickly and align with incubators to do this. So that's the suggestion. And then I guess the guy said, this is from Startup Bootcamp in Dublin. They said, where's the D gone? I guess really in Horizon 2020, it's innovation. That's the word that's there, and I guess there's new forms of innovation all over Horizon 2020. And I guess for startups and for SMEs, that's the important part. They're more closer to innovation requirements than they are to pure research. So that's the gaps and the suggestions that we have around those gaps. I suppose that prompted us to start thinking, well, what would be a model engagement template? That's something we're going to work on through this year. But the first thoughts on it are, an out-of-the-box solution for SMEs and startups, a sample fire service package, so a package they can just download and start off with a simple engagement model, you know, a 1 or 2 page letter engagement, tools and offers, 12 weeks life cycle, user acceptance testing, and then really try and focus on the innovation model. And suppose what FIRE is doing with this, the brokerage project that they're looking for in the innovation model, that's really where this is going to go, and then make use of Article 15. So that's the, I suppose, a summary of the requirements that we got back. It's an analysis of what those requirements look like, and it's some suggestions of what the FIRE community could start to think about as it goes forward into Horizon 2020. So thanks very much, and I don't know if there's time for questions now, or if the questions are for later. But,
there is time for a few questions. Question in the audience?
No? Okay, there you go.
Just on the last point about supporting innovation, I'm not sure what the situation is in Europe, but where I come from in South Africa, generally those funds are very much designed for large-scale industrial type projects and not so much towards SME. So I'm not sure if it is a similar type. Generally, certainly we want innovation funds. And is there a way of kind of bridging that?
Well, I think traditionally it was larger packages of funding, but I think what's happened now, it seems to be split up, and that's the good thing. Like the one that Fed for Fire had recently, I think it was quantum of 25K for an experiment for an SME. I think the new Horizon 2020 is talking about 50 or 60 K's worth of funding for an experiment or for a function. So I think it's going in the right direction for sure. But this is really the results we got from this dialogue throughout last year, when the Horizon 2020 model wasn't mature. And
so first is maybe the same question I asked in mind, is that the practical example when SME really wanted to use, let's say, services provided by several different facilities. Do you have any practical requests like that?
Kind of, not really. You see, they didn't come along to us and say they want to use A and B and C in the chain. They didn't say that. They came along with their need. So, and then if you take that further, you know, say, for example, the medical ones, they wanted to be able to have user testing. Most of them were building applications. So, if you break that down, that means having test beds with hospitals and doctors connected in. So none of those things seem to exist in FIRE right now. But if they were there, that would be one category of test bed. And then if there was, well, so I guess it has to be hosted on a cloud of some sort. So that's kind of the bonfire model. So I guess if you break it down, the answer is yes. But they don't ask for that. They say what is their need. But they don't ask for it. And I think it's I think the Fed for Fire, when they did last year, they actually said that we wanted to have projects asking for to use Federation. I think that was a constraint because that's kind of saying we want you to use our product because that's what we built, rather than saying what's the real need. So that's does that answer your question, Raphaelis?
Well, for me, it's really it's just interesting to know if there was a real case, what was the real case, but it's well, if I understood correctly, your answer is that the need is there, but it's not necessarily well understood by the potential users.
Yeah.
Maybe I can witness another case. We had this commercial SME that I was talking about. So they were providing mobile marketing, so very basic tools to provide that. So they were just sending SMS to a cloud application. But when we introduced them and explained them what they could do for the evolution of the product, they realized that they were interested to use Planet Lab for scalability test and IMAN's facility to test with a number of clients, then the Bonfire facility to implement the different cloud application to make also some scalability tests. So finally, they don't express it, as Tonal mentioned, but for sure, even non-innovative SME need to be interested to have multiple use of different firewall test facilities. So that's what we saw. Maybe we have also some other cases.
Yeah, but what I also want to add is that it's not necessarily the use of multiple testbeds by a single SME that's a motivation to do federation. I think there are lots of other aspects to federation that motivate why you will build a federation, like efficiency in tool building, like if we, for example, introduce someone now to a tool that we use, which is also used in other testbeds, those people have built knowledge that they can reuse and work together with other people. So it's not necessarily, it's not because only a small percentage of cases really use federation for parallel testing that federation is not worthwhile. But that's a different thing that I wanted to, because isn't your question a bit, is federation useful? That's the underlying message.
No, I don't have any message. I just wanted to any practical, let's say, examples. I have other 2 points just to mention. Is maybe these are also potential gaps which were not indicated. First one is basically you indicate services and importance of services for SMEs.
By service
Yes.
now I mean that the SME could just buy something or get something from the testbed as a service, so that there's kind of a service life cycle is analyzed, understood, and it's kind of like you just get something. It's a complete service. I don't mean that some SMEs want to test services, but that's not what I was talking about.
Yes, but maybe one of another, let's say, points to consider is user friendliness of, let's say, of a FIA portal.
Yeah.
If you are doing resource pooling and SME is coming in, it should be really simple and easy to use this portal and without really reading a million of pages of information. So,
Precisely.
I don't know if it's really covered precisely there. It's covered under services, which is a bit broader. But
Yeah, well, no.
user friendliness of portal, I don't know. Here.
I mean, that's it. They're out of the box. They want it to work just like that. They don't want to have to read 200 pages of manuals. It's embedded within that. But yeah, it's the same thing.
Yes. And another thing is, if we are, for SMEs, it's commercial exploitation is really important. And we have the case, we had discussion that with Sci-Fi, that they are really very open. And so far, we don't really have very concrete answer that everything must be open. And let's say maybe FIRE could offer not so open type of experimentation. So for, let's say, products, which is SMEs what they are doing. But then in that case, what is important is confidentiality. And I just find it.
Well, I didn't. Nobody brought that up as an issue. I mean, I think every SME we spoke to was assuming that their intellectual property would be respected and that the whole process would be done on a confidential basis. I'm sure that's what they understood. Nobody brought that up as an issue. I certainly have assumed that everything is kind of confidential.
Maybe we can also include it somewhere and we can have a look whether there is capacity to provide this within FIRE.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay, maybe we can keep other questions for after the presentation. So let's go to our first activity.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
So let's go to the following presentation by the first argument from Wing City.
Yeah.
Who's
It's the last one.
It's the
Yes.
Of course.
Yes. Thank you.
in this case you can focus on maybe on the SME requirements.
Yes, of course. So again, my name is Dimitris Karvounas. I'm a research engineer in Wings ICT Solutions. And this is the outline of my presentation. As you can see, it consists of 4 main areas. First of all, it's a brief introduction to the Wings ICT solutions profile. Then we continue with a very brief description of the crew project. The Evolve is our experimentation in crew. And finally, the return of experience that we gained during our experimentation in crew. Okay. So, Wings is a fast-growing company in Greece, in Athens, which focuses on conducting research and development and providing consulting services in all the major areas of telecommunication networks and services. Of course, our company comprises members with many years of experience. Actually, our senior researchers have an experience of more than 20 years in national and international research projects. So as you can see, we are involved in actually in all areas of telecommunications. For example, the cognitive relative systems, and actually this is the area that we focused in our experiment in crew. Also, we are involved, for example, in intelligent equipment management, which involves Android, Windows, Linux, every kind of devices. Of course, cognitive Internet of Things, or management of infrastructure, big data. And of course, the last one is the message that we want to pass, that we want to offer services for a sustainable, inclusive, prosperous society. Some highlights and collaborations that have been gained these years. First of all, Wings has participated in various FP7 projects and has collaborated with top-class players in the telecommunications area. So one of the projects was, as I mentioned, the fire project crew, and actually Wings is participated in Open Code 2 there. And also Wings collaborates with, as I mentioned, with top-class players like Intel for device management or Alcatel-Lucent regarding smart wireless access. So from these collaborations, Wings had the opportunity to participate in various international events and demonstration activities. For example, as we can see.
Sorry, can you come to the topic more rapidly?
Okay.
I said short presentation of the company, short presentation of the project, and go to the topic.
Okay, and some highlights. Okay, I am sure most of you are also familiar with the crew project. As you can see, it comprises 8 core partners and 9 open core partners, one of which is also Wings ICT Solutions. Okay, here you can see the testbeds that are provided by crew. I must say that Wings focused on the use of the testbed that was provided by iMinds, and specifically the W-Island testbed. And so, just a few words regarding our experimentation, which was the Evolve project. So, as I mentioned, our problem focused on cognitive radio systems, and specifically the problem was a node that may lose its connectivity, and so we must find a solution in order to provide connectivity again. The solution was through wireless mesh networks, which we were able to implement in the crew testbed. As you can see, we experimented with both fixed nodes and robot nodes, so as to introduce mobility aspects in our experiment. Our experiment was mostly Java-based. and so we were able to provide some real-time QoS measurements, and of course to use the mobile robots in order to have study mobility aspects. And actually there is also, if you want the other days, you can come also to see a demonstration down in the crew booth. And also, of course, although we are an SME, we also try to disseminate our results in high quality journals. For example, you can see more information about our experiment in the upcoming issue of Communications magazine in April. And so let's come to the main focus of this workshop, which is the return of experience from the use of this FIRE facility. So it will be actually in the form of question and answers. So the question is, how did FIRE help WINGS? So previously WINGS has conducted research in opportunistic networking within the Wanted project. However, all our results that we have obtained were through simulations. So in order to have some more concrete results, we needed to test our solution in real environments. And so this FIRE facility that was offered by Crew offered us this opportunity to test our solutions in a real testbed under a controlled environment. So through our experimentation, we were able to validate our simulation results through the results that we obtained from the testbed. Also, since from the Crew testbed, we were able to use actually around 60 nodes. So it provided us also with a large scale experimentation. Also, the solution that was developed during our participation in Crew was more close to a real project and not more close to a simulation. Also, we also had the opportunity to collaborate with other Crew partners. Of course, not only just to offer us support, for example, in the use of the facilities, but also to exchange ideas in the most trending, let's say, ideas in telecommunications. And of course, through our participation in Crew, we had the opportunity to disseminate our results in various events and demonstrations. Okay, so of course, apparently, there is not only this good stuff that was provided by Crew. Of course, there were some problematic situations also. For example, one of them was that the WI lab testbed, for example, is not just a member in the Crew project, but participates also in a plethora of other European projects. And so I must say it was, many times it was very difficult to find available nodes in order to conduct our experiment. But now I must say that mostly it has been, this problem has been addressed with the development from my mind of reservation mechanism, which and also also through the use of maximum time in order to use the nodes to experiment, which was, for example, was around 8 hours, the maximum time that we could use the nodes daily. Okay, so some more general questions. So how do FIRE facilities can help SMEs? Okay, so as it was mentioned earlier, First of all, the SMEs can have access to a real testing environment under controlled conditions. And so the SMEs can test their products, of course, before going out to the market. And also they can verify the results that they have previously obtained from simulation during the research period. Also, of course, feedback and support is provided from experts that also work in fire facilities. Also, actually in most cases that I have seen, there is no cost, or maybe the cost is very low in order to use the fire facilities. So it's a very good opportunity to try to experiment in these facilities. And also, of course, using the fire facilities, the SMEs have the opportunity to exchange ideas with other users of the testbed. But of course, not only SMEs, but they might be from academia or industries or other SMEs, etc. Okay, so what kind of SMEs can use the fire facilities? Okay, apparently, mostly high-tech SMEs will be the users of the fire facilities, since the majority of the fire facilities are maybe computers, or maybe a testbed for Internet of Things, etc. So the majority of the SMEs that will participate in fire facilities will be maybe software development SMEs, or hardware manufacturers that want to test their hardware in the testbed. But also, of course, it's not limited only to these SMEs. It can be any kind of SMEs. I can't remember now the name of this fire project, but I remember there is one project that actually offer this whole production chain. So an SME could, for example, test all this production chain in order to optimize it. So the other question is, for each of these SMEs that were mentioned earlier, in what phase of development is fire useful? So apparently the most important phase is the research and development phase, since the product that is under development is not finalized yet and out to the market. So it can be tested, some performance measurements can be obtained, or maybe we can also identify potential bugs maybe that may occur in the project. And also, of course, again, during the research and development, some feedback from other users can also be provided. Also, of course, the use of the fire facilities is not limited in the R&D phase, but also it can be after the product is on sale, since the product can continue to be enhanced in next releases. So, about the best way to introduce SMEs to fire. Okay, I believe, of course, the most common way is the organization of workshops, for example, just like this that we are now. Or maybe in other events, there can be tutorials or training days, maybe, where the experts or the fire facilities can train members of the SMEs about their devices and their test beds. And so the last question is, how should fire evolve in order to better serve the SMEs? So apparently the best way is to move from research-oriented experimentation to industrial-driven testbeds that will follow the most recent advancements and trends. For example, the 5G is coming, so apparently the testbeds that will be provided by new FIRE projects should be focused in 5G. And also regarding the economical models for the FIRE testbeds, okay, until now I think that most of them are they follow the fee-based model. I don't think that there is a testbed that someone has to pay for it. I think that.
I want to correct this actually, because you indeed are using, for example, wireless LFT for free, but this is only because you are part of the executive partners in the crew project. Should you have come to us directly?
No, but actually for crew at least, because I know everybody could send an email just to the administrators and ask them.
That's still the case, but if you would have, then you have.
But yes, of course, I don't know about the other projects if they have to pay a small fee maybe in order to use these facilities. But of course, as I mentioned also, there can be also a fee-based model in order to support the testbeds after the funding has ended from the European Union. And of course, it might depend on the expected revenue. For example, if we expect to earn high revenue, then maybe a higher fee could be paid. Okay, so.
Questions?
Well, I have one question immediately about your last sentence. You were talking about revenue. Whose revenue? The revenue?
The revenue of the SME, of course.
Okay. So next question related to that. So what fee would Wings be prepared to pay? That's a great question.
Actually, I don't know. I can't answer this.
Just in proportion. I mean, have you thought about that? Because you mentioned.
Yes. No, actually, yes. It's something that we have thought about. The fee that we could pay maybe in order to use these facilities.
Other questions?
You say also there, in terms of how FIRE can evolve to better service, you say better structure. What do you mean by better structure? I understand the one-stop shop idea. This is also what Stefan.
Actually, this is the question, and our answer is below. Yeah.
Okay.
But the question actually was, how. From what I can understand, since I think Jean-Charles provided the question, right?
Okay, so these were the questions provided by
I just sent the question or to guide a little bit.
Okay.
I didn't have precise idea in mind, but I expected the speaker to give some ideas on this.
So your fee-based model practically is kind of reversing what is reality today, because reality today is you organize an open call and you actually sub-grant, so you provide funds to people to come and test their ideas.
Yes. Although there are also some free open calls.
And there are open access also calls where you actually free of charge you can use the facility to test.
Right.
But what you're saying is that people would be prepared to pay a fee in order to be able to validate their ideas to the provider of the experimental facility.
Yes, actually, of course, since after some years, of course, the funding from the European Union would be stopped. So the testbed needs to continue running. So someone must pay about this maintenance. So I believe a small fee is fair.
It relates to the discussion we had before in terms of sustainability, and also Stefan mentioned you cannot make a profit out of the facility.
I think if you say a small fee, let's say running facilities is a lot more expensive than you think. It
Yes,
just
of
simply-
course, it's not
simply-
something that will be decided from us. Of course,
Yeah, and just to add to, not so directly to you, but I think because you say the funding will stop, if at one point the funding stops from the Commission, we would be in problems to keep operating the way we are. It's not, well, I think one of the things also which I want to mention, today we always ask the question, what should FIRE do to become better? But I think we also should look at the indirect effects of FIRE, for example. Because of FIRE, lots of testbeds are being built and people build knowledge and expertise and lots of things. And it's not necessarily because FIRE doesn't do this or that the knowledge, or in the end, there is not an influence on the market, because there might be a different way to exploit the knowledge that is built through initiatives such as FIRE. It's not directly to you, but I think it's a good point to mention here.
Dr. I must mention that, of course, it's not only the maintenance of the testbed, but technology moves forward. So the testbed must also be upgraded in order to support these new technologies, like 5G, for example. So yes, somehow must be paid.
Yeah. Which are the testbeds which are being built because of FIRE?
Well, it's not because of FIRE, but like for example, the iMinds testbeds, if there would not be FIRE, there would be far less people working actively around experimentation. Well, it's not that there's directly development, for example, in a project, but just because people can work around the experimentation team, and there's research being done. This has a huge influence on what we can do locally. Of course, for iMinds, the money is not only coming from the Commission, we also have other sources of funding, but it helps a lot, especially for keeping testbeds up to date. Like, for example, Crew. If it weren't for Crew, we would never have had the cognitive radio part of our wireless testbed, and we did not spend money from the Commission on buying equipment, but we did have the luxury to do some developments and to build frameworks and help people to use these cognitive components inside our testbed. And in the end, this then becomes part of our offer, which can also be used in different ways. So it's directly and indirectly, for us at least, and I guess for all these projects that are, for example, FIRE, and for them.
I perhaps can add to that is in most cases, capital investment in setting up the testbed, that's done through other funds. That's not European funds. Most of the time is that local funds, whatever, local authorities provide those funds. But running the facility itself, their participation of having that facility being run as a part of this European project, that provides some coverage of the running funds, operational costs, and so that helps indeed to do that. And that's what Stefan is saying, is that in the case of iMinds, without the European project, it would not be possible to run
In the same way.
And here I have another question. What the Commission could do better to make facilities even more sustainable? Like
I think one of the things that would be very good if there would be a mechanism in projects, not just a personal topic.
Yeah.
If there could be a mechanism to join a project as a partner without lots of obligations, with the single obligation of providing a facility that works and providing support to people whenever they need it. And this is something that we do in local projects, in ICON, well, in our iMinds projects. There we are just in a project as test facility, or what we need to do is provide the facility, of course give some guaranteed access to the facility, and whenever there are problems or special requests, we will help the people purely with the testing side. So for us, there is no need to keep track of all conference calls in the project and to write lengthy deliverables and this and that, but we can simply do what we are best at, and talking from ILFT perspective and just offering the testbeds. And through participation like that, you also learn a lot about requirements you can improve, and you can basically have some of the funds to keep things running operational. That would be so. One of the things actually I wondered was whether this would be possible in new FIRE Plus call, for example, with the subcontracting. Could you be a testbed?
Not the subcontracting, but the subgranting, which is
also
thing that don't.
let's just stop for now because we start a discussion which is very interesting but lengthy. So we'll make that after the last presentation. So I propose we come to Peter's presentation. Maybe Peter, you can focus on what the open call brings new in terms of SME services. and then we can continue the discussion that we started.
Okay, my name is Peter van Dalen. I'm with iMinds, also in Belgium. And my relation to Fire is the fact that I'm supporting the project management for Fire, and especially looking at all the things regarding the goals. This was the outline of my presentation, but I will not present Fire. I will not present iLabT, because Stefan has already done. I will immediately skip to the point also special about the SMEs. So I'll skip these ones. So if you just think about SMEs, then what they do not have is the financial means for research projects. So SMEs, they have a small number of people. Most of them are trying to keep their heads above water to survive. They don't have a lot of time for large research projects being run. They don't have the manpower to spend on writing and follow-up of projects. They also do not have the administrative staff to deal with the complex administration, especially from EU projects. But that's also the case for a lot of national and regional projects. So what we should do is to involve SMEs, is to create a lower threshold and a much lower administrative load for them to participate in any project. I'll come back to that in how this translates then in the SME call for the Fat for Fire project. What SMEs do work on is they work on a very short timeline. That's much different to academic organizations, research organizations, large industrial groups. They work for a quick time to market because they're running on short on money. They're burning their invested money quite rapidly. They most of the time work on single or a very limited number of products. So what we should do is to keep our work in pace with their work timeline, and that means that we have to create a fast turnaround scheme. And then what do SMEs come up with? They come up with very specific problems they have. They will also come up with requests for support in product testing and also in product development. So what we need to do also is to create a supporting environment. You have to support them, listen to their requests, and support them in their participation and testing that they will do. Now, Stefan already mentioned something about the strategy that we use for the iLabT. Is the first step always is to think about and discuss together with the SMEs about their projects, about their ideas, what they want to test. Now, it's so that, and that might be a shift in way of thinking for research organizations. Normally, we as academic partners, we say, okay, we have this nice facility, we know what the possibilities are, and we wait for customers. This is not the way that we can wait for SMEs to come to us. We have to approach them, we have to attract them, we have to listen to them, and try to translate their requests into what our test facility can do. It's not up to them to see how their request or their problem has to be implemented on the test facility. No, it's our task, because we know the test facility best. We have to translate their products or their requests into our facilities. Now, this is something that we have done with our test facilities on a national basis, and it works quite well. The second thing is we have to customize our offer. We can just say, okay, this is the test facility, this is the manual, and with all the procedures and things like that. No, this doesn't work. And there perhaps already an advantage comes into play of the federated structure. Now, something that I, as a little bit of an outsider, not directly involved in the technical issues of the test facilities, have seen with the discussion within Fire is that when we talk to the different test facilities and we try to bring them into a federated structure, what we forced the people of these test facilities to do is to think about user friendliness. You already raised that question. And I think the fact that you work within a federated structure makes that all the test facilities have to think more towards potential users. They do not work anymore or think anymore as just research organizations. No, they have to think about how other organizations also work, and they have to create one portal which is indeed much user-friendly than their own portal or their own way of dealing with experts. So in this case, we also translate the request, that offer that we have, into a very, let's say, translated offer towards the SME. Now, based on that, we make a price offer, that we say how it works, relatively detailed, and then during the project execution itself, we support them. We provide involvement of our own researchers to support the SME. Because they work very fast, and they want to work very fast, they want immediately their problems to be solved. And so we follow with our own people how the project runs, the experiment runs. We provide support, let's say, on an ad hoc basis of a single contact person who can immediately try to solve the problems they encounter. And then also something that we provide is we always provide the possibility to extend the access to the facility. So once their specific project is run, we also look into the possibility to extend the use of the facility by the SME. So this is something which is always considered. Now, how does this reflect into the FAT4FIRE open calls? Well, traditionally the open calls is trying to make the existing research facilities in the area of future internet available for execution of innovative experiments. Very nice, but what we do specifically for this SME open call is we lower the threshold for SMEs to use these federated infrastructures for their business. So how do we lower the threshold? Is first of all a very simplified proposal template. It's 10 pages maximum that the proposal has to be written on, but it only requires about 3 to 6 pages of the experiment description. The rest is just an abstract that they also have to provide, and there are even several pages that we as FAT4FIRE project coordinators have to provide to them, and that we together with them define. Also, a very simplified administrative procedure. Thanks to our project officer, we arranged that those experimenters, the SME experimenters, join the project not as partner, but as subcontractor. It means for them that they just send us an invoice and that's it. They don't care about the Form C, the personal manpower reporting or whatever, the reporting. So there are no EC administrative procedures involved. They just send us an invoice, and that makes it much easier for them, because in a lot of cases that's one of the big thresholds for them to participate, is if they hear that they are going to join as a partner, well, then they get blocked. And also there is a very simplified reporting. We only require a final reporting at the end of the experiment. Because, and that's also something that is provided, is the ad hoc support. So there is a pattern. So it's one of the FAT4FIRE project partners, in fact the one who is running the test facility on which the SME is going to work, he serves as a patron. So that means that indeed he is responsible for that test facility, he is responsible for running that experiment on this facility, and he will provide the support, the ad hoc support, and he also assists in providing feedback on how the experiment is run. So that means that with the final report that we get from the SME itself, we already have a lot of information before that, even through that pattern is run. So that's how the SME is implemented. The SME open call is implemented. The call is currently open. It's going to end and close the 2nd of April. Here are some details. So indeed, it's a 25K maximum per experiment. There is an extra fund for that patron, the FAT4FIRE partner, who is going to provide support. And it's so that 90% of the cost is paid after the approval of the report. So it means that after their experiment, the SME sends us an invoice, 90% is paid, and 10% is only paid as a kind of holdback after the project review. And that's one of the requirements that comes from Brussels. So the modalities, only SMEs are participating. That means that indeed we have the reviewing panel who is going to look into those open calls and is going to review them and categorize them, is only going to look at SME calls. So they're not in competition to large industries, they're not in competition with research organizations. It's only looking at SMEs at that time. There's only one SME per experiment who is allowed. So there are no joint, so again, to make it easy on an administrative basis. Okay, they must qualify for participation in the EC project, of course. They join as a subcontractor, and they can even send in multiple proposals, but there will be only one per SME being appointed. Now, there was also a question raised, why, let's say, submitting something to a federated facility. So is it necessary to have an experiment that runs on different facilities or not? Yeah. Well, in this case, for the SME open call, it's not required to do that. So they can just run that experiment on a single test facility. Okay, if they run it on different ones, that's fine with us. It's a little bit more information that we get as a project, but it's not a requirement for their proposal. It's not going to change in their way it's ranked. So, okay, well, this is more general what's in for the experimental, and that's perhaps also what is the advantage of having access to a federated facility, is that when discussing with an SME and you learn something, then as a person, as a technical person, knowing how the different test facilities work, you can also think, okay, it might be also interesting to run that experiment on that facility or whatever. So you can have some added value to the experiment itself. The support which is given by the patron, in this case for the SME, and I think I'll stop with this one, is that of course we guarantee that the facility is going to run. We provide pointers to technical questions, but in this way, specifically for the SME, we also suggest alternative ways to reach the goals. We help setting them up to the experiments. We hope to solve also technical problems together with them, and also custom modifications if it is required. I'll stop with that.
Okay, thanks a lot, Peter. By the way, Dimitrios, I forgot to thank you for your shame on me. So, any questions to Peter, and then we can have a discussion. Yeah.
Why one SME per experiment? Why do you say you cannot have more than one SME?
It's just for administrative reasons. Is that it's much easier to set up all kinds of bilateral arrangements than adding a third party. So it's a decision that we made to do it like that. But it's, let's say, the basic idea is try to make it administratively as simple as possible.
Yeah, I think your model is great. Of the total budget you have, I don't know, 7 million or something, what percentage do you think will go towards that model for SMEs and those types of?
Well, it's so that we're going to run this SME open call several times during the rest of the project. So in total at this moment there are 5 open calls planned, and that will add up to a budget that goes to the SMEs between 400 and 500K. That goes to specific to the SMEs, and then you have the extra money which comes from unallocated funds within the budget that goes to the patrons, but that stays within the consortium itself. So, but the total budget at this moment is about 400 to 500K that goes to SMEs.
And that's, okay, 400K out of your, okay.
That's part of the 7.7 million. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, however, maybe it's interesting also for what Donald just asked. This model that Peter described, which is actually taking place under Pre-FIA as a kind of pilot model, is also described, and I would like to raise your attention to this. It's also described in Call 1 of FIRE Plus under Innovation Action. So there is a request for a single proposal worth 5 million under the innovation actions, which is exactly the broker between ideas and experiments. So we expect that there will be a proposal with a relatively low administrative cost of its own, so it will be mainly administration, dissemination of the model, etc., etc. However, the majority of the 5 million budget should be devoted to sub-granting either to people who want to test their ideas or to patrons who offer their services, being the owners of the testbed, being another project in fire, etc. So the money will be mainly used for sub-grants, which is this Article 15 that you mentioned in your presentation, minimal administrative burden, which Stefan also mentioned as a prerequisite for, let's say, a quick response to an SME need. And the money will be devoted mainly to that. So disseminating, this is a one-stop shop for submitting your proposals for or ideas for experimentation, validation, testing. We will do the matchmaking with the right testbed or facility. We will support you with expertise. We will guide you through the process. And we could also appoint a patron to help you through the whole thing. And we also have available funds to support your validation needs or the needs of the patron who will be supported. So I think this is a very interesting idea, and it's in call 1, so it's until the 23rd of April. And we hope to get a very good proposal there.
Yeah, just a comment to add to that. The open call approach is very similar to the ones that we used for cloud computing in the BSc project, where we had subcontracts. Yeah, I like the patron idea. I think that's very interesting because support is always a problem. Doing the subcontracting then proved to be a bit more complicated than we expected. Yeah, because of people's expectations of what it should look like. Yeah, and what they were used to as organisations. But it was for both small research groups and SMEs and start-ups. Yeah, but so it was a successful. Well, in fact, I think might be interesting to see what pent-up demand comes through this.
Yeah.
Because we had many more proposals, valid ones that we couldn't actually accommodate.
Well, we are also, since this is indeed the first time we're going to run this, we are extremely anxious to see what kind of response that we will have and to see how it will run. Now, it's also it's something that I forgot to mention, is if you look at the timing, here, at the timing, it's so that the call closes on 2nd of April, and the experiment is going to start 1st of May. That means that we will have only 2 weeks that we will do the internal evaluation. Then we pass let's say, the ranking that we have done to Brussels. They will also limit their time to review it to 2 weeks, so that indeed, after only 1 month after the closure of the call, that we will start the experiment. Since you have July and August, we have extended the running time for the experiments to 4 months, but it was only originally intended to have 3 months, but because of the holidays, we extended to 4 months. So that will also be a challenge to see whether or not we can keep up with that timing. So we will learn a lot from this call. There will be a second call in September, most probably on exactly the same scheme. And after the second call, it will be an evaluation to see how we have to, say, tune it or fine-tune it. Yes, Mark.
Question for Peter on from the Nikos. I assume that Pre-FIA only got something like 60% refunded advance payment. So how are you able to pay the newcomers and participants 90% before you have the money to pay them out? I guess this is a question for the Commission.
Yeah.
If this innovation call, if you're going to give more than 60% pre-funding.
Well,
otherwise the participants have to wait right to the end of the project, but everybody else gets 7 million dollars to get 90%.
That's correct. It's so that within Pre-FIA we used a kind of trick in the sense that, so if you look at the whole project consortium, you are limited to 85%, and then it stops until your final review. What we did is we lowered that threshold for all the partners to something like 82.5. And with this extra money, that is sufficient, based on the simulation that we do, is to cover the partners that we have to provide for 100%. And the second thing is that the prepayment, 60%, we got a much higher prepayment because we did a simulation, and together with George Pereira, we came up with the need to say, okay, here we're going to get a cash flow, and based on that, we got a larger prepayment.
Other questions? Geraldine, you wanted to ask something some time ago?
Can I then just say something? In our case, because you asked also whether it could be the same situation. In our case, I'm afraid we used to the real extent the flexibility that this new mechanism gives us to let the project decide exactly how they want to do it. So practically what we expect is that in the proposals will define the way that they will decide who will get the sub-grants, how they will select them, how they will calculate the amounts. So there should be some kind of billing mechanism. So the amounts that they will sub-grant to experimenters or to sponsors, patrons, they will have also to define how they want to do the pre-financing, whether there will be 90% with the final report, as Peter said, or whatever. So practically, the whole thing has to be described in the proposal. But of course, we take full advantage of what Article 15 provides us, which is also important to note the liabilities are also kind of different. So don't forget the Commission will have a grant agreement with the proposers, not with the people receiving the sub-grant. So this has to be taken into account.
So just another question, just Peter. You said 500K is roughly for the model that you just described, which is excellent, and that means probably 43. That's about 7% of your budget. That means about 43% is going to the other model. How do you get the balance of that? What's the policy thought process that gave you that ratio, sort of 43% to 7% roughly?
It's so that we originally, when the proposal was written, we had a specific budget set out for the open calls.
Yes.
Based on the first open call and the outcome of that, so the general open call, the fact that there were no SMEs participating, we said we have to do something special.
Yeah.
And then we started to look into, okay, this money is already spent on the first open call. This is what we want to do with the second open call, the general one. So what's left over for the SMEs, how we're going to divide it. So we had the original budget for all the open calls, and then we just say, okay, we have to tune it and to divide it up to SME calls, general open calls, and whatever. And so that was done internally within the project, how to come up with that. So, but just to come up with a reasonable split of the whole budget.
Okay.
So that makes it attractive.
And that's the balance you're going to stick with, like 7% to 43%?
No, it's going to be more for SMEs. It's 500K for the SMEs.
You 50%, don't you, for experiments? Is that right?
Sorry?
You 50% of your budget is for experiments? For open calls?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. It's much lower. It's lower because there is, out of the total budget, there is, let's say, part of what is unallocated is for open calls, but there is also a budget which was set apart for extending and upgrading the existing test facilities also.
Okay.
So there is an internal call system as well for providing upgrading internal facilities already. So it's not the 50% of the whole budget that goes to external open calls. And then there is a difference between experiments and also test facilities. So there's a whole split of all numbers. I have to look into the numbers itself to see what the percentage is of SME calls, but it's more substantial in percentage-wise than 7%.
Yeah, okay. I thought it was 50% for projects. Okay, thank you. That's interesting.
Okay, so any last question before we close the session?
Just to understand better, on the page 13 and 12, you talked about extended access to facilities. What do you mean?
It's so that, let's say, once their project is finished, so for example, in this case, the SME, one of the things, in fact, it's not highlighted here, but one of the things that we request the SME in their report is just a very brief report on how their experiments run, but they also have to provide us feedback on what their experience is with our test facility. So how is the user friendliness? What gaps, roadblocks did they experience? And also, what are their plans for the future? Do they intend to use our facilities for future development, future testing, or whatever? And so if they come up with suggestions like that, we will start to talk to them. It's so that within the Fed4Fire project, the fourth year of the project is solely dedicated to looking at sustainability of the federated facilities. So it's not working anymore on, let's say, upgrading and working on the federation itself. No, it's just running it and see how we can make it a sustainable, work towards a sustainable solution. That's the fourth year of the project. And so information by the SMEs in their report helps us in doing that. But specifically, whenever we talk to them, we ask them, okay, what are your future plans? Is it just one case, one single thing that you would like to test? Or what is your view in the future? Are you still going to test it? Because that's feedback that we will use in our sustainability model.
How do they get to know you? How do they come to you? Where do they come from?
That's a tricky question. And I think that, and now it's let's say it's feedback of a completely different project that I was involved in. It was in the optics domain. It's called Nexpresso, and there it's a similar project where Nexpresso, it's not George, not George Clooney, it's not George Clooney, whatever, it's with an accent. And so the idea there is that we have funds from the Commission and we buy optical components from component suppliers which are pre-competitive, and we give them for free to R&D institutions. So it's also a kind of open call system where we say, okay, these components are available, these ones are let's say kind of projects, and we rank them as well. So it's a very simple system. Now, this project runs towards the end, and we did a survey to everybody who was participating. And one of the questions is, how did you start to know the project? And the two things that came up is newsletters. Newsletters. Any kind of newsletter that you have a big distribution, newsletter. So for example, a lot of the people who started to know the project learned it from being on the distribution list of a newsletter, one way or another. It came out that the newsletter that came out of Brussels was not first ranked. But it's so that one way or another, if you can get onto newsletters of those commercial magazines, which are in the area, then that's perfect, because that reaches a lot of people. The second thing that we learned is personal contacts. So it's the partners, the project partners themselves, who have to reach out towards their own, let's say, community of companies, SMEs, and things like that that they should contact. And in the case of iMinds, for example, we have a relatively large database of local, regional SMEs. We reach out to them, and let's say since it's regional, there are a lot of, let's say, former PhD students working there. Then they just call us, we give them some explanation, and so they start to work, get in contact. So personal contact is good. One thing we also learned is a website is not the ideal, it's not a good way to distribute information. So to distribute the news. What it's good for is to have it as a reference, to have all the documents, all the information, how it works, who to contact and things like that, but it's not the proper way of announcement. Announcement is done through personal contacts and through large newsletters.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Can I add to that perhaps? So in the ILRT flow, the open call of FED4FIRE could be one of the options to get funding for these people. And then I just say this looks like something that could be going in FED4FIRE. Of course, then they have to submit for themselves. We're not going to write a proposal for that. Yeah, and indeed,
Newsletters. And large newsletters. Newsletters from projects, that's fine, but those projects know the project already and things like that. So it's you have to reach out of the community, which is let's say around the table here or at the conference here. You have to reach out much further, and then you have to get onto kind of those commercial newsletters.
What about associations?
Associations
also,
because that's good for the personal contacts.
Yes, exactly. And in several countries we see these associations in electronics, in ICT and so on. It's a very strong network already at the national
level. For example, we had in that other project, that optics project, there were two local clusters there. There was Optics Valley, which is in the region of Paris, and Enterprise Island. And if you look at the statistics, a lot of projects come up out of Ireland and out of the Paris region. Personal contacts.
Right, so it's okay with one question. Yeah, okay, so I think that the session was quite interesting. A lot of information exchange. Things that we forgot, for instance, the interest to have collaboration just with the project partner can be a good motivation also for an SME. We'll make a report out of that, I think that will be quite interesting. Hans, you want to have the last word?
Only very, very short. I would like to thank you and all of you and the speakers, but I hope that you will come back tomorrow morning at 9:30 in the other room. I think it's which there's anyone? The Appella. Okay, Appella we start with collaboration issues and so on. So we will continue basically from here. So wish you a nice evening. Just those who are new here in the second part, could you fill in your contact information on the list, which is with Paul. See a few new faces here. Okay, thank you.